The last Omega who destroyed an entire Alpha kingdom. Ancient secret revealed. Chapter 1. The prophecy awakens. Sera's hands trembled as the last Alpha King fell at her feet, his crown rolling across blood-soaked marble. She had done the impossible. A lone Omega had brought an empire to its knees. But as she stared at the destruction around her, one question burned in her mind. How had a girl who couldn't even read the ancient texts become the weapon that ended a 1,000-year reign? 3 months earlier, the Temple of Eternal Submission stood as a monument to Alpha Dominion. Sera scrubbed its floors daily, her silver eyes downcast as priests passed, their robes whispering prayers of gratitude for Omega docility. At 19, unbonded and unbroken, she was an anomaly. The other servants whispered she was defective. They had no idea how right they were. The dreams had grown worse. Visions of women commanding storms, raising mountains, their eyes blazing with power that made alphas kneel. Sera tried to dismiss them as fantasies, but tonight they'd been so vivid she'd woken with electricity crackling across her skin. Unable to sleep, she'd wandered the corridors and discovered something impossible, a draft behind a tapestry, a hidden passage descending into darkness. Every rational thought screamed to report it. Instead, Sera squeezed through the crack. The passage opened into a vast chamber. The moment she entered, the walls erupted with light, ancient symbols blazing azure and silver, responding to her presence. Sera gasped as meaning crystallized in her mind, words she shouldn't be able to read flowing like water. In the time before chains, when earth and sky spoke as one, her fingers touched a glowing symbol. The chamber exploded with brilliance. Images flooded her consciousness, Omegas calling lightning, commanding armies, standing as equals to alphas. No, not equals. Superior. Step away from that wall, child. Sera spun. An elderly priestess stood at the entrance, sea-line, always watching from shadows, always silent until now. I didn't mean to, Sera began. You were called. The chamber recognizes its own. Sea-line moved closer, studying her with unsettling intensity. Tell me, have you always felt things others cannot? Storms before they arrive? Emotions like physical heat? Sera's throat closed. Those were secrets she'd kept even from herself. You're awakening, Sea-line said. The binding grows weak in you. What binding? The one placed on all Omegas 5,000 years ago when Alphas decided they preferred us docile. Bitterness dripped from every word. We weren't always weak, Sera. Once, we commanded earth, water, fire, and air. We were the bridge between humanity and creation itself. The old priestess traced symbols on the wall. Alpha warriors grew jealous of our power. They discovered a ritual to bind it, redirected inward, turning our connection to primal forces into nurturing instincts, bonding compulsions, submission. Generation by generation, the binding strengthened until Omegas forgot we'd ever been anything else. Why am I different? Because bloodlines matter. Most Omega lines have been diluted beyond recovery. But rare families kept the gift dormant, passed through mothers who whispered the old stories even when it meant death. Sea-line's eyes glistened. Your mother was one such woman. She died protecting you, protecting this secret. The official story claimed bandits. Sera had never questioned it. She was murdered, Sera said flatly. Because of me. Because you're the last true daughter of the first Omega line. Your blood carries all 4 elemental gifts, undiluted and pure. And now you're awakening. The symbols flared brighter, responding to Sera's roiling emotions, fear, anger, grief, and something else. Something that felt like lightning before it strikes. What happens when I fully awaken? Sea-line's pause spoke volumes. There is a ritual called the Unbinding. It can restore what was taken. But boots echoed from above. Many boots moving fast. They know, Sea-line hissed. Someone betrayed us. There's another way out. What about you? I've waited my entire life for this moment. She pressed a crystal into Sera's palm. This will guide you to the Remnant, others like us. Run. Learn. And when you're ready. Her smile turned fierce. "Burn it all down." The voices grew louder. Sea pushed Sera toward a narrow fissure. "The unbinding," Sera said desperately. "How?" "The Remnant will teach you." "But Sera," Sea voice dropped to a whisper. "The ritual requires sacrifice. Decide if freedom is worth the price." Sera squeezed into the opening. The last thing she saw was Sea turning to face armed men pouring through the entrance, her spine straight, her hands beginning to glow with ethereal light. Then darkness swallowed her, and she ran blind through ancient passages, the crystal warming in her fist. Behind her came thunder and screaming, and one final sound, Sea voice, younger somehow, filled with ancient power, speaking words Sera didn't know but understood in her bones. "The last daughter rises. The binding ends, and the alphas will finally know fear." Chapter 2. The hidden bloodline. Earlier that night, before the guards arrived, Sea had led Sera deeper into the hidden chambers, to a library that shouldn't exist. Thousands of scrolls lined walls carved from living rock, their spines marked with symbols that seemed to shift in the crystal light. "This is the true history," Sea said, her voice echoing in the vast space. "Everything the alphas tried to erase." She pulled out a scroll, unrolling it across a stone table. Sera watched, transfixed, as the ancient script glowed under her gaze. Again, impossibly, she could read it. 5,000 years ago, alphas and omegas lived as equals, Sea began. But we held different gifts. Alphas possessed physical strength, tactical brilliance, the ability to lead through charisma and will. Omegas. She gestured to the scroll. We were guardians of elemental power. We maintained balance, calling rain for crops, calming earthquakes, channeling fire safely, commanding winds for sailing vessels. We were necessary to each other. Complementary. But then came the betrayal. Sea moved to a larger tablet, its surface covered in disturbing imagery, alphas forming a circle around kneeling omegas, dark energies spiraling downward. The alpha kings grew jealous. They convinced themselves that such power was dangerous, that omegas needed protection from our own abilities. But their true fear was losing control. Her finger traced the carved figures. They spent decades searching for a way to bind elemental power. And they found it. The binding ritual was performed simultaneously across all Omega settlements. It didn't remove our power, that was impossible. Instead, it redirected it inward, transforming our connection to primal forces into the very traits alphas found useful: overwhelming nurturing instincts, compulsions to bond and submit, physiological changes that made us dependent on alpha pheromones. Sera felt sick. We became what they wanted. Exactly. And each generation, as bound omegas bore children, the binding grew stronger. The old power faded until it became myth, then forgotten entirely. Sea hand trembled as she touched another scroll. But some families remembered. They passed down stories in secret, kept the truth alive even when it meant death. Like my mother. Your mother was extraordinary. She knew what you carried in your blood. Gifts from all 4 elemental lines, somehow preserved through millennia. She sought me out, made me promise to watch over you, to teach you when the time came. Sea eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She died drawing the king's hunters away from you. They never found what they were looking for, because she never broke, never revealed your location. Sera's knees weakened. Her entire childhood had been a lie, not just the official histories, but her own memories, sanitized and false. The unbinding, she managed. You mentioned a ritual. Sea pulled out a final scroll, handling it with reverence. This is the key. The unbinding reverses what was done, shatters the chains placed on Omega power. But Sera, you must understand, this much power was never meant for one person to contain. The first Omegas distributed it among many, maintaining balance, channeling all 4 elements through a single body. What happens? The few who attempted it in ancient times succeeded in breaking their bonds. They became vessels of pure elemental fury, unstoppable, devastating. but the power consumed them. Within days, they lost their humanity, becoming mindless forces of destruction until their bodies simply burned out. So, it's a death sentence. A choice between slavery and a brief, blazing freedom. Between submission and godhood, however temporary. Sea-Lion gripped Sera's shoulders. I won't lie to you. The unbinding will transform you into a weapon. You'll have the power to reshape the world, to destroy the Alpha Kingdoms, to free every Omega from their chains. But you'll pay with everything you are. Sera stared at the scroll, at the intricate ritual circles and ancient words. Part of her wanted to run, to hide, to remain the simple temple servant she'd always been. But that girl had never truly existed. She'd been living in a cage she couldn't even see. How long do I have to decide? Not long. Your awakening has already begun. The chamber responding to you. Your ability to read the ancient script. Within weeks, your power will manifest whether you're ready or not. Better to undergo the unbinding in a controlled setting than to awaken chaotically, and the sound of splintering would echoed from above. Sea-Lion's head snapped up. No. It's too soon. They shouldn't have found us yet. What's happening? Someone betrayed us. The old priestess moved with sudden urgency, shoving scrolls into Sera's arms. Take these. Memorize them. The Remnant will need every fragment of knowledge we've preserved. Boots thundered through the passages above. Shouted orders. The ring of drawn steel. There's a tunnel behind the eastern wall, Sea-Lion said, pushing aside a tapestry to reveal another hidden passage. It leads beyond the city. Follow the crystal. It will guide you to the Remnant. They're hidden in the wastes, where the Alphas never venture. Tell them I sent you. Tell them the last daughter has awakened. I won't leave you. You have no choice. Sea-Lion's voice cracked with command, and for a moment, Sera felt the echo of ancient power radiating from the old woman. I'm dead either way, child. Too old to run. Too dangerous to leave alive. But you, she cupped Sera's face. You're our only hope. The only one who can break the chains for good. The guards were in the main chamber now. Sera could hear them calling for reinforcements. Go, Sea-Lion whispered. Make my death mean something. Sera fled into the tunnel, Sea-Lion's final words chasing her into darkness. They're coming for you. Prince Kael himself. He knows what you are. He wants to consume your power at the moment of awakening.
Run, Sera.
Run, and never stop. Chapter 3. The Alpha Prince's obsession. Prince Kael stood in the grand throne room of Valorax, his fingers drumming against the pommel of his ceremonial sword. Before him, on his knees, was the temple guard captain who'd allowed Sera to escape. Explain to me, Kael said, his voice deceptively soft, how a single Omega girl evaded 50 trained soldiers. My lord, the old priestess. She used some kind of power. The men who got close to her, they're still screaming, my lord. Their minds are broken. Kael's jaw tightened. So Sea-Lion had revealed herself at last. He'd suspected the old woman knew more than she claimed, but to actually wield the old power. And the girl? Gone, my lord. The tunnels collapsed behind her. We're digging through the rubble. But... Stop. Kael waved dismissively. She's already beyond the city by now. Sea-Lion would have ensured it. He turned to the window overlooking Valorax's sprawling capital. Summon my hunters. And bring me High Scholar Aldrich. The captain fled. Kael waited, his mind racing through scenarios. He'd been planning this for 3 years, ever since he'd discovered fragmentary texts suggesting the truth about Omegas, about their hidden power, about the possibility of claiming that power for himself. His father, King Theron, was dying. The succession should have been simple. Kael was the eldest son, groomed for leadership, beloved by the military. But succession law required an Alpha King to be bonded to an Omega of pure bloodline. Without that bond, the nobles could challenge his claim. Kael had rejected every Omega presented to him. None carried the old blood. None could give him what he truly wanted, not just legitimacy, but power beyond anything the kingdom had ever seen. Then he'd found Sera, a temple servant with silver eyes and an unusual presence that made his instincts scream. He'd had her watched, waiting for signs of awakening. And tonight, his patience had been rewarded. "You summon me, my lord?" High Scholar Aldrich entered, ancient and bent, but his eyes were sharp. He'd been Kael's secret weapon, translating the forbidden texts recovered from ruins across the kingdom. "Tell me again about the consumption ritual," Kael demanded. Aldrich's expression grew troubled. "My lord, as I've explained, the texts are fragmentary. But they suggest that at the moment of an Omega's full awakening, when the binding breaks and ancient power floods through them, an Alpha can perform a ritual that channels that power into himself instead, making me what the first Omegas were. In theory. But my lord, the texts also warn of consequences. The ritual requires the Omega's complete destruction, body and soul consumed to fuel the transformation. And even then, there's no guarantee an Alpha's physiology can withstand elemental power. I'll take that risk." Kael turned back to the window. Because the alternative is continuing this charade, Alphas pretending to rule while knowing that once, Omegas were our superiors. I won't live in the shadow of a buried truth. Where do you think she'll go? There are rumors. Whispers of Omegas who fled beyond the wastes after the binding, who preserved the old ways. If sea lions sent her anywhere, it would be there. Kael's smile was cold. Let her run. Let her reach this remnant and learn. Let her undergo whatever training they offer. And when she finally awakens fully, when her power reaches its peak. His hand clenched into a fist. I'll be waiting to take it all. Aldrich looked troubled. The girl is innocent, my lord. She didn't choose. There are no innocents, scholar. Only the powerful and the powerless. The Omegas had their chance at dominance and lost it. I won't make the same mistake. He strode toward the door. Prepare my hunters. We march for the wastes at dawn. My lord, even your father doesn't know the full extent of your research. If he discovers you're hunting an awakening Omega to steal her power, my father is dying. By the time he realizes what's happening, I'll be beyond his reach, beyond anyone's reach. Kael paused at the threshold. Oh, and Aldrich? Send word to have Sea Lion's apprentices executed. All of them. I want every Omega in this kingdom to understand what happens when they keep secrets from their betters. Aldrich paled. My lord, they're just children. They're examples. Kael strode into the hallway, leaving the scholar's horrified silence behind. Servants scattered before him, their terror satisfying. This was what power looked like, not the pretense of nobility, but the reality of dominance. In his chambers, Kael studied the maps spread across his desk. The wastes were vast, deadly, supposedly uninhabitable. But somewhere within that emptiness was a hidden canyon, a refuge for the Omega descendants. His spies had spent years searching, finding nothing. But now he had an advantage, Sera herself. She'd lead him straight to the Remnant, gathering them all in one place. And when her awakening reached its peak, when she stood at the center of their community radiating enough power to level mountains, he'd consume her. Body, power, soul. Everything. And then the world would learn what a true Alpha could become. A messenger burst through the door, gasping. My lord. The dying priestess, before she expired, she spoke a prophecy. She said, the last daughter will end your line, Kael of Valarax. She will become the storm that drowns your kingdom, the fire that burns your legacy to ash. And when she stands over your corpse, she will ask herself if freedom was worth the price, and the answer will destroy you all over again. Chapter 4. Flight through the forgotten paths. Sera's lungs burned as she raced through the tunnel, sea lion scrolls clutched against her chest. The crystal in her pocket pulsed with warmth, seeming to pull her forward through the darkness. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit had faded, but she didn't dare slow down. The passage twisted deeper underground, the walls growing damp, then wet. Soon she was splashing through ankle-deep water, the cold seeping through her thin servant shoes. How long had she been running? Hours? Days? Time felt meaningless in this subterranean labyrinth. Then, voices ahead. Sera's heart lurched until she recognized one of them. This way. The crystal is glowing brighter. She must be close. Sea emerged from a side passage, her robes torn and bloodied, but alive. With her was a younger woman Sera recognized as one of the priestess's apprentices. "You're alive," Sera gasped. "Barely." Sea smile was pained. They underestimated how much fight this old woman had left. "But we need to move. The tunnels won't hold them long, and I—" She swayed, and her apprentice caught her. "She's hurt badly," the young woman said. The guard stabbed her twice before she could get away. "I'm Mira, by the way. And you must be Sera." Together they continued, Mira supporting Sea while Sera led the way with the glowing crystal. The tunnels branched and rebranched, a maze that would have been impossible to navigate without the crystal's guidance. Sera wondered who had created these passages, and when, and for what purpose. "Training," Sea said, as if reading her thoughts. Her voice was weak. "In the old days, these were training grounds where young Omegas learned to channel elemental forces in controlled environments. The crystal responds to old bloodlines, guiding them to safety." "Conserve your strength," Mira urged. But Sea shook her head. "No time for conservation. Listen, Sera. What you're about to face, the awakening, the choice of the unbinding. You need to understand what your power truly is." They paused in a wider chamber, where bioluminescent fungi cast eerie blue-green light across the walls. Sea lowered herself onto a stone outcropping, her breathing labored. "The Alphas taught you that Omega nature is about submission, nurturing, bonding. But those are just the binding's perversion of your true gifts." She placed a trembling hand over Sera's heart. "Earth, the power to endure, to be unmovable when necessary, to create foundation and structure. Water, the power to adapt, to flow around obstacles, to heal and purify. Fire, the power to transform, to burn away what's obsolete, to forge new realities. Air, the power to move freely, to see from all perspectives, to communicate and connect. These aren't weak traits, Sera. They're primal forces that built civilization itself. The binding didn't create Omega gentleness. It imprisoned Omega's strength and called it domesticity." Sera felt something stir inside her, like a sleeping giant shifting position. "How do I access it?" "Stop trying to control it. Stop thinking like the Alphas taught you. That power is about domination and force. Omega power is about unity, about becoming one with the elements instead of commanding them." Sea grip tightened. "When you feel the earth beneath your feet, don't stand on it. Be part of it. When you breathe air, don't just inhale. Remember you're made of the same molecules, connected to every wind that's ever blown." The tunnel trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They're trying to collapse the passages," Mira said, fear creeping into her voice. "Then we move faster." Sea tried to stand but collapsed instead. Her apprentice caught her, and Sera saw the blood. Too much blood, spreading across the old woman's robes. "No," Sera whispered. "Yes." Sea smile was sad. "The guards did their job well. I'll slow you down and you need to reach the remnant. Mira knows the way from here. I won't leave you. You must." Sea gripped Sera's wrist with surprising strength. "Promise me. Promise you'll complete the unbinding. Promise you'll free our people from these chains, no matter the cost." Tears blurred Sera's vision. "I promise." "Good girl." Sea eyes drifted closed. "Mira, take her.
Go now.
Don't let my death be meaningless." Another tremor shook the tunnel. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Mira pulled Sera away, and this time she didn't resist. They ran as the tunnel system began collapsing behind them, ran until Sera's legs screamed, and her lungs felt like torn leather. The crystal grew warmer, its light brighter, pulling them forward through passages that seemed to shift and change. Finally, after what felt like days, they burst from a concealed exit into blinding sunlight. Sera stumbled, her eyes adjusting to reveal a wasteland stretching in every direction, Cracked earth, twisted rock formations, a sun that beat down like a hammer. The wastes, Mira said, her voice hollow. Nothing lives here. Nothing grows. It's where the alphas dumped their mistakes and their exiles. And where the free omegas fled. Yes. Mira pointed to a distant rock formation that shimmered in the heat. 3 days' walk to the canyon. No water, no shade, no mercy. Can you make it? Sera looked back at the tunnel entrance, already collapsing, sealing Sea Lion's tomb. I have to. They walked.
And walked.
The sun scorched them by day, bitter cold tormented them by night. Sera's lips cracked and bled. Her vision swam with mirages. But the crystal kept pulsing, a steady heartbeat in her palm, leading them onward. On the second day, Mira collapsed. Sera dragged her into the shadow of a rock formation, but there was no water to give her, no relief from the heat. The young woman's breathing grew shallow. Leave me, Mira whispered.
No.
Sera, you have to. I said no. Sera's anger flared, hot and overwhelming. And suddenly the air around them cooled, just slightly. A breeze that shouldn't exist in this dead place stirred her hair. Myra's eyes widened. You did that. I don't know how. Sea Lion was right. You're awakening. Mira gripped her hand. Then try again. Try harder. If you truly carry the old power, if you're truly the last daughter, prove it. Make water. I can't. I don't know. Feel it. Myra's desperation gave her strength. Stop thinking about what you can't do. Stop listening to the binding. You're a child of the first omegas. Water is your birthright. Claim it. Sera closed her eyes, reaching for something she'd never known she possessed. She thought about water, not controlling it, but being it. Adaptable. Essential. Life itself. The air grew humid. Impossible in this desert, but there it was, moisture condensing, gathering, and then falling.
Rain.
Just a few drops at first, then more, falling only in their small shelter, nowhere else. Mira laughed through her tears, tilting her face up to catch the precious drops. You're doing it. You're actually doing it. But the effort was draining. Sera felt something inside her crack, and with it came pain, searing, overwhelming, like her bones were trying to reshape themselves. She gasped, and the rain stopped. What's happening to me? Myra's expression mixed awe and fear. The awakening. Your body is remembering what it was always meant to be. But Sera. She gripped Sera's shoulders. The binding is fighting back. That's why it hurts. Your conditioning, everything the alpha's programmed into you, it's trying to suppress the change. You need to get to the remnant soon before. A horn sounded in the distance. Then another. And another. Sera turned to see dust clouds rising on the horizon, dozens of them moving fast. Myra's face went white with terror. That's an alpha hunting party. A big one. They've found our trail. And now that you've used your power, they'll be able to track you even easier. We have maybe an hour before they catch us. And Sera? Her voice broke. Prince Kael himself leads them. Chapter 5. The remnants warning Sera and Mira ran. The canyon appeared suddenly, hidden behind a rock formation that looked solid until you were right upon it, and then the earth simply opened, revealing depths that stole Sera's breath. Rope bridges spanned impossible distances between dwellings carved directly into rust-red cliffs, waterfalls cascading down rock faces in sheets of silver. And everywhere omegas. Dozens of them.
Free.
Who approaches the remnant? A strong voice called from above. A woman stood on a cliff ledge, bow drawn. Sea Lion, send us. Mira shouted. This is Sera, the last daughter. Movement rippled through the canyon. Women appeared on bridges, in doorways, all turning to stare. Then a figure descended rapidly down a rope, a woman perhaps in her 70s, moving with the agility of someone half her age. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, and when she looked at Sera, it felt like being seen down to her bones. Grandmother Thessa, Mira breathed, dropping to one knee. Rise, child. Where is Sea Lion?
Dead.
Killed helping us escape. Myra's voice cracked. Thessa's expression hardened. Then she looked past them, toward the wastes. You were followed.
Yes.
Prince Kael and his hunters. Less than an hour behind us. Then we have no time for gentle introductions. Thessa gripped Sera's chin, tilting her face to study her eyes. Silver, like the first matriarchs. And I can feel it, power barely contained, the binding cracking.
Yes.
You're exactly what Sea Line claimed. She released Sera and raised her voice to carry through the canyon. Gather the council. We have a decision to make, and the alphas are coming. Sera found herself swept into the heart of the village, through corridors carved from living rock, past chambers where children, Omega children, played without fear. It was surreal, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. The council chamber was circular, its walls covered in the same glowing symbols Sera had seen in the temple. 12 women sat in a ring, their ages ranging from young to ancient, but all carried themselves with a dignity and strength Sera had never seen in Omega's under Alpha rule. This is Sera, Thessa announced. Daughter of the first bloodline, carrier of all 4 elemental gifts. Sea Line died protecting her, and now Prince Kael hunts her, seeking to consume her power at the moment of full awakening. Murmurs rippled through the council. We've heard the prophecies, one council member said. But to see it manifest, she's just a girl. The first matriarchs were once just girls too. Thessa's tone brooked no argument. Sera, tell us, has your awakening begun? I made it rain, Sera said quietly. In the desert. And it hurt, like something inside me was tearing. The binding fighting your nature. It will grow worse. Thessa's expression softened slightly. Child, do you understand what you are? What you could become? Sea Line explained some of it. The Unbinding Ritual. The price. Then you know it will destroy you. Every Omega who has attempted it has paid with her life. Thessa leaned forward. But before that end, for a brief time, you would wield power enough to reshape the world. To destroy kingdoms. To break the binding for every Omega everywhere. Or, Sera prompted, or you undergo the unbinding tonight. Face Prince Kael with the full power of the first Omegas. Destroy his army, break the binding rituals across the kingdom, and give our people true freedom. Thessa's voice grew heavy. Before the power destroys you. Before Sera could respond, a younger woman burst into the chamber. Grandmother. The scouts report Kael's forces have reached the canyon rim. 3,000 soldiers. Siege equipment. And the prince himself waits under a banner of parley. Thessa's jaw tightened. How did they find us so quickly? He's been searching for years, Mira said quietly. And now that Sera's awakening has begun, she's like a beacon. Every use of power makes her easier to track. Then we're out of time. Thessa stood, her presence commanding the room. I'll hear what the prince has to say, though I suspect I already know. Sera, come with me. The rest of you, prepare defenses. If this goes badly, we may need to evacuate through the lower tunnels. They climbed to the canyon rim where a platform overlooked the vast expanse of the wastes. Below, Kael's army spread like a dark stain across the desert. Tents, siege weapons, soldiers in perfect formation. And at the center, Prince Kael himself, resplendent in black and gold armor, waiting with a white parley flag. Thessa cupped her hands and called down. Prince of Valorax, state your business with the Remnant. Kael's voice carried with unnatural clarity, some kind of amplification device. I seek only what is mine by right. The Omega girl, Sera. Surrender her, and your community will be spared. Resist, and I will reduce this canyon to rubble and everyone in it to corpses. She is not yours, Prince. She is free, as we all are here. Free? Kael's laugh echoed off canyon walls. You hide in a hole in the ground, terrified of the world. That's not freedom. That's a prettier cage. I offer Sera something better. Purpose. United with me, she can help usher in a new age of alpha dominance. Her power, channeled through proper leadership, could ensure prosperity for generations. You mean you would consume her power and enslave every Omega under an even stronger binding? Thessa shot back. I mean, I would restore order. The binding was necessary then, and remains necessary now. Without it, Omega power would run rampant, unchecked, destroying everything. The first Alpha Kings understood this. They did what was needed to protect civilization itself. Sera stepped forward before Thessa could stop her. You're afraid. Kael's eyes found her even across the distance. What did you say? You're afraid of us. Of what we represent. Because deep down, you know that your strength is borrowed, built on our suppression. Without the binding, alphas would have to actually earn their positions instead of inheriting dominance through birth. Careful, girl. You speak of things you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You don't want my power to strengthen your rule. You want it because you're terrified of what happens if I keep it. If I break the binding. If every Omega awakens to what they truly are. Kael's expression darkened. Last chance. Come down willingly, submit to bonding, and I'll let your friends live. Refuse, and I'll paint this canyon red. Sera turned to Thessa. How long would the unbinding ritual take? 4 hours from start to finish. And he'll attack at dawn? Most likely. He won't risk a night assault on unfamiliar terrain. Sera looked out over the army, at the impossible odds, at the prince who thought he could claim her like property. Then she looked back at the canyon, at the Omegas watching from bridges and doorways, at the children who'd never known chains. Tell him I refuse. And tell him that by tomorrow's sunrise, he'll understand exactly why the first alphas feared us. She met Thessa's storm-gray eyes. Prepare the unbinding ritual. Tonight, under the blood moon, I'm taking back what was stolen from us, even if it costs me everything. Chapter 6. Training the storm. You're still trying to control it, Thessa said, circling Sera in the training ground. Stop thinking like an alpha. They control. We connect. Sera stood in a cleared area outside the canyon, sweat soaking her clothes despite the evening chill. Around her, a dozen Remnant teachers watched, ready to intervene if her power spiraled out of control. For 6 weeks, they'd been pushing her, and every day felt like dying and being reborn. Again, Thessa commanded. Sera closed her eyes, reaching for the earth beneath her feet. Not commanding it, becoming it. She felt her consciousness sink down through sand and stone, felt the weight and patience of mountains, the slow grinding of tectonic plates. And then connection. The ground trembled, responding to her will. Good. Now water. Without breaking her connection to earth, Sera extended her awareness to the moisture in the air, the underground streams far below. Water was harder. It wanted to flow, to move, to change. Sera stopped trying to hold it and instead flowed with it. Humidity increased around her, droplets condensing from nothing. Fire. This was where it always went wrong. Fire demanded transformation, demanded she burn away who she'd been. Sera hesitated and immediately lost her connection to both earth and water. The ground stilled. The moisture evaporated. You're afraid of it, one of the teachers said. Liara, a middle-aged woman whose specialty was fire manipulation. Why? Because fire destroys. Fire transforms, Liara corrected. It's not destruction, it's change. The forest fire that seems to devastate actually clears dead growth, allowing new life to flourish. The forge fire that melts or creates tools and art. You fear change, Sera. You fear becoming something other than what you've always been. Sera opened her eyes. Because the unbinding will change me into something that can't survive. Then you've already accepted death. Now accept transformation. Liara held out her hand, and a small flame danced on her palm. This is me. My essence, my truth, given form. Fire isn't separate from me. It's an expression of who I am. Until you can say the same, you'll never master it. Sera tried again. And again. And again. She burned herself, scorched the sand to glass, nearly set Liara's hair on fire. But slowly, painfully, she began to understand. Fire wasn't about anger or destruction. It was about the willingness to transform, to let the old self burn away so something new could emerge. On the 15th day, she held fire in both hands without pain. Air next, Thessa said. The hardest of all. Air was everywhere and nowhere. Sera could feel it moving through her lungs, across her skin, but connecting to it meant becoming as free and formless as wind itself. It meant letting go of solidity, of certainty, of identity. Week after week, she tried and failed. Air slipped through her mental grasp like water through fingers. Until one day, exhausted and frustrated, she simply stopped trying, stopped thinking, stopped being Sera. And in that moment of perfect emptiness, she felt it. The wind responded. Not because she commanded it, but because in that instant, there was no difference between Sera and air. She was the wind. The wind was her. The teachers gasped as Sera rose 3 feet off the ground, held aloft by currents that shouldn't exist, her hair whipping in a wind that blew only around her. For elements, Thessa breathed, all connected simultaneously. I've never seen anything like it, but the effort was immense. Sera's nose began to bleed. Her vision swam. She crashed back to earth, gasping, every muscle screaming. That's enough for today, Thessa said, helping her up. You're progressing faster than anyone expected. But Sera, her expression grew troubled. The more you awaken, the more Prince Kael can track you. His army grows larger every day. We've counted reinforcements arriving. He's called in forces from across the kingdom. 5,000 soldiers now. Maybe more. How long do we have?
Days.
Maybe a week. He's building siege equipment specifically designed to collapse the canyon. When he attacks, nowhere will be safe. Sera looked at her hands, at the faint scorch marks and the dirt embedded under her nails. Then we need to accelerate my training. There is no accelerating readiness. The unbinding requires perfect balance between all 4 elements. If you attempt it before you're ready. I'll die either way, Sera interrupted. Better to die trying than to let Kael slaughter everyone here. That night, Sera couldn't sleep. She walked through the canyon village, watching Omegas live their lives, cooking, talking, laughing, teaching children, maintaining their hidden home. This was what freedom looked like. Imperfect, vulnerable, but real. In a small dwelling, she found Mira teaching a group of young girls to read, something forbidden to Omegas in the kingdom. The children's faces glowed with concentration and joy. Will they remember this? Sera asked quietly when Mira joined her outside. If I fail, if Kael destroys us all, will anyone remember that for one brief moment, Omegas lived free? If you fail, there won't be anyone left to remember, Mira said bluntly. But Sera, if you succeed, even for a day, even for an hour, you'll change everything. You'll prove that Omegas aren't what the Alphas claimed. You'll break the binding not just magically but psychologically. Every Omega in the kingdom will know the truth. And then I'll die, and they'll be alone to face the consequences.
No.
Then you'll die, and they'll be free to choose their own consequences. Mira gripped her hand. That's what freedom means. Not safety. Not certainty. The right to choose, even if the choice is hard. The next morning, Sera woke to alarms. She ran to the canyon rim to find Kael's army in motion, not attacking, but positioning for siege. And at the center of their camp, a massive wooden framework was being assembled. What is that? She asked. Thessa's face was grim. A trebuchet. Large enough to throw boulders that will collapse the canyon walls. He's not planning invasion. He's planning to bury us. How long? 2 days. Maybe 3. Once that weapon is complete, we have no defense. Sera felt something crystallize inside her. Fear transmuting into resolve, uncertainty burning away to leave only purpose. She turned to Thessa. Prepare the unbinding ritual for tonight. I'm ready. Sera, you've only been training for 6 weeks. The ritual requires someone willing to pay the price. That's me. She looked out at Kael's army. Either I become strong enough to stop him, or we all die anyway. At least this way, we choose how the story ends. Thessa studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we begin preparations. The blood moon rises tonight, the optimal time for the ritual. But Sera, her voice caught. I want you to understand. What you'll become, it won't be you anymore. The person standing here, the girl who came to us afraid and uncertain, she dies tonight. What emerges will have your memories, your motivations, but the power will change everything. You'll see the world differently, feel differently, think differently. I know.
Do you?
Do you really understand that you're volunteering for ego death? That's Sera, this Sera, ends tonight. Sera looked at her hands, remembering the first time she'd made it rain in the desert, remembering Sea Lion's sacrifice, her mother's sacrifice, all the Omegas who'd suffered under the binding, who'd forgotten they were ever anything more than what the Alphas claimed. This Sera was never meant to exist, she said quietly. I've been living a lie my entire life, a story the Alphas wrote about who and what I should be. Tonight, I finally get to write my own ending, even if it's my last chapter. She met Thessa's eyes. But first, tell me the complete truth about the unbinding. Sea Lion said it requires sacrifice. What exactly does that mean? What happens to me after the ritual is complete? Chapter 7. The Alpha army arrives. Kael stood before the massive trebuchet, running his hand along the wooden frame. It was a masterpiece of destructive engineering, capable of hurling boulders the size of horses into the canyon, collapsing the cliff dwellings one by one until nothing remained but rubble and broken bodies. It's nearly complete, my lord, his master engineer reported. By tomorrow evening, we can begin the bombardment. Excellent. Kael turned to survey his camp. 5,000 soldiers, enough siege equipment to level a city, and supplies for a month-long campaign, if necessary. He'd left nothing to chance. His second-in-command approached, armor dusty from patrol. My lord, the scouts report unusual activity in the canyon. Gathering of some kind in the central plaza. And there's something else, he hesitated.
Speak.
The air around the canyon feels wrong. Charged, like before a lightning storm. But the sky is clear. Some of the men are getting nervous. They're saying the place is cursed. Kael smiled. Not cursed. Awakening. The girl's power is growing. Good. Let it grow. The stronger she becomes before I take her, the more power I'll absorb. Are you certain the consumption ritual will work, my lord? The scholar seemed uncertain. Aldrich is a coward who sees obstacles instead of opportunities. The ancient texts are clear. At the moment of full awakening, when an Omega's power peaks, an Alpha can perform a ritual that channels that power into himself. Kael's hand went to the dagger at his belt, ceremonial, inscribed with symbols he'd spent years learning to read. All I need is her blood, her consent or subjugation, and the proper invocations. And if she resists, then I'll drag her kicking and screaming to the ritual circle and bind her there until her will breaks. One way or another, her power will be mine. He looked toward the canyon, toward the hidden village, and the girl who didn't yet understand what she truly was. Though I suspect she'll come willingly in the end. Heroes always do. They can't resist the chance to save others, even at cost to themselves. A runner approached, breathless. My lord. Our spies in the canyon report the Remnant is preparing something major. Some kind of ritual circle in their central plaza. They're calling it the Unbinding. Kael went very still. When? Tonight, my lord. Under the blood moon. For the first time in weeks, Kael felt genuine concern. The Unbinding. He'd found only fragmentary references to it in the ancient texts, dire warnings about what happened when an Omega's full power was unleashed without the constraints of the binding. World-shaking destruction, reality-warping chaos, and madness. Always madness. Change of plans, he said sharply. We attack tonight, before the ritual completes. My lord, a night assault on unfamiliar terrain is preferable to facing an unbound Omega at full power. Trust me, if that ritual completes, we lose any chance of controlling her. Kael strode toward his command tent. Send word to all units. Prepare for immediate assault. We go in at midnight. Kill everyone except Sera. I want her alive, even if barely. And someone bring me Scholar Aldrich. I need to know exactly what we're facing. 2 hours later, Aldrich stood before Kael's map table, looking more frightened than the prince had ever seen him. The unbinding is suicide, the old scholar said. Every historical account ends the same way. The Omega gains immense power but loses her humanity within days. She becomes a living natural disaster, destroying everything around her until her body burns out from channeling too much elemental force. How much power are we talking about? The last recorded unbinding was 3,000 years ago. The Omega in question, a woman named Sera, leveled an entire mountain range before she died. Reshaped coastlines. Created storms that lasted months. By the end, she couldn't remember her own name, couldn't distinguish friend from foe. She just raged. Kael absorbed this. So Sera will become unstoppable for a brief time, then self-destruct. Essentially, yes. Which is why I don't understand your concern, my lord. Let her undergo the ritual. Let her destroy the remnant in her madness. Then, when she's burned out and dying, claim whatever power remains. You're thinking too small, scholar. I don't want the dregs of her power. I want it all. The full force of an awakening at its peak, before the madness sets in, before the burnout begins. That's what the consumption ritual requires, an Omega at the moment of maximum power. If I wait until she's depleted, I get nothing. Then you're talking about interrupting the unbinding mid-ritual.
Exactly.
We'll attack while she's vulnerable, while the transformation is incomplete. Capture her in that liminal state between bound and unbound, and perform the consumption ritual before either process fully completes. Aldrich looked horrified. My lord, the magical forces involved, trying to hijack an unbinding in progress could kill you. Could kill everyone within miles. The energies would be completely unstable. Life is risk, scholar. Those too afraid to gamble don't deserve to win. Kael dismissed him with a wave.
Go.
Prepare your ritual implements. And pray your translations were accurate. As night fell, Kael stood at the edge of his camp, watching the blood moon rise, massive, crimson, seeming to pulse like a beating heart. In the canyon, he could see light growing, not torchlight, but something else. Something that made his alpha instincts scream warnings. Part of him wondered if he was making a mistake. The safe play would be to let Sera complete her ritual, wait for the inevitable burnout, then claim the kingdom's throne without any supernatural complications. But safety had never interested Kael. Power did. And the chance to become something more than human, more than alpha, was worth any risk. My lord, his second-in-command said quietly. The men are assembled, awaiting your command. Kael drew his sword, its blade gleaming in the blood moon's light. Then let's go claim our future. But as he led his army toward the canyon rim, something made him look back. And there, barely visible in the distance, he saw them. Figures appearing on the horizon.
Dozens of them.
No, hundreds. Omegas, emerging from the wastes, drawn by something they didn't understand but couldn't resist. What are they doing here? A soldier muttered. Kael understood, and the realization chilled him. Sera's awakening was calling to them, every Omega within 100 miles drawn to the ritual like moths to flame. If he didn't stop this now, if that unbinding completed, it wouldn't just free one girl. It would shatter the binding everywhere, awakening every Omega in the kingdom simultaneously. Attack, he roared.
Now.
Before it's too late. Chapter 8. The unbinding ritual. Sera knelt in the center of the ritual circle, for pillars rising around her, ancient monoliths carved with symbols that predated the Alpha Kingdoms. Earth to her north, water to her west, fire to her south, air to her east. The cardinal points. The foundation of reality itself. Thessa and the Remnant elders stood at a distance, chanting in a language Sera didn't know but somehow understood. The words weren't just sound. They were invocations, commands that reality itself seemed compelled to obey. The blood moon hung overhead, huge and crimson, bathing everything in light that made shadows seem alive. Are you ready? Thessa called. Sera looked at her hands, soon to wield more power than any one person should.
No.
But I'm willing. Then we begin. The chanting intensified. The pillars began to glow, blue for water, green for earth, red for fire, white for air. The light grew brighter, and Sera felt something inside her respond, like answering a question she'd always wanted to ask. Then the pillars erupted, and energy poured into her. Pain exploded through every nerve. Sera screamed as the binding broke, not gently, but like shattering chains with a sledgehammer. 5,000 years of conditioning, of lies, of suppression, all tearing away at once. You are weak, the binding whispered as it died. You exist to serve. You need an alpha's protection. You are less. You are prey.
You are property.
No. Sera's voice wasn't her own anymore. It echoed with the voices of 10,000 ancestors, all the Omegas who'd lived and died in chains. I am power itself. The energy intensified. Sera felt her consciousness expand, no longer constrained to one body, one perspective. She was the earth beneath the canyon, ancient and patient. She was the water in the streams, flowing and adaptable. She was the fire in the ritual torches, transforming and pure. She was the air they all breathed, connecting everything. And she was Sera, the last daughter, the one who would break them all free. The vision came then, not something she saw, but something she experienced. She stood in a place outside time, and before her were the spirits of the first Omegas. They were magnificent, not gentle or nurturing or submissive. They were storms given human form, oceans that walked, mountains that spoke. And they were weeping. What was done to us? One spirit said, and her voice was thunder. What was done to our daughters and their daughters and all who came after? They made us forget what we were. They convinced us we'd always been weak. The alphas feared us, another added, her voice the crackling of flames. Not because we were dangerous, but because we were equal. And they couldn't bear equals, only masters and servants. Show her, a third spirit commanded, her voice the whisper of wind through leaves. Show her the truth they buried. The vision shifted, and Sera witnessed the first betrayal. She saw the ancient world, alphas and omegas working together, building the first cities, the first civilizations. She saw Omega weathercallers ensuring harvests, Omega healers channeling water's restorative properties, Omega artificers using fire to forge wonders, Omega messengers riding the wind itself. And she saw alpha jealousy growing like poison.
Saw them meet in secret.
Saw them plot. It's for their own protection, the first Alpha King said in the vision. Such power in untrained hands is dangerous. We'll bind it, control it, keep them safe from themselves. But Sera could see the lie beneath the words. They didn't want to protect. They wanted to possess. They wanted to be the only ones who mattered, the only ones with power, the only ones who shaped history. The binding ritual they performed was obscene in its cruelty. It didn't just suppress power, it rewired Omega nature itself, turning strength into weakness, independence into dependence, pride into submission. And they did it to thousands simultaneously, targeting Omegas across the world before anyone understood what was happening. The screams of her ancestors echoed through Sera's mind. The anguish of mothers watching their daughters lose the gifts they'd been meant to inherit. The despair of warriors finding themselves suddenly docile, unable to fight against the chains being wrapped around them. They took everything, Sera whispered, tears streaming down her face. Yes, the first spirit said. And now you have the chance to take it back. But Sera, the spirit's form solidified, revealing a woman who looked eerily like Sera herself. You must understand what accepting this power means. The human mind wasn't designed to channel all four elements simultaneously. You'll have days, maybe a week, before the power burns away your humanity. You'll become rage and righteousness, without the anchor of identity. You'll destroy not just your enemies, but potentially everything around you. I know.
Do you?
Do you truly accept that the girl you were dies tonight? That's Sera. Your hopes, your dreams, your chance at a normal life. All of it ends here? Sera thought about the life she might have had. Bonding to an alpha, bearing children, growing old in quiet servitude. Safe, small, A life lived in someone else's shadow. That life was never real, she said. It was a cage, so comfortable I didn't realize I was trapped. I choose this. I choose freedom, even if it lasts only days. I choose to burn brightly rather than dim slowly. I choose. The vision shattered. Horns blared outside the canyon. Steel rang against steel. They're attacking, someone screamed. Kael's forces are attacking now. Sera opened her eyes, except they weren't eyes anymore. They glowed pure white, burning with power that made everyone step back. The ritual wasn't complete, but it was far enough along that the power flooding through her was already transforming her. Thessa, she said, and her voice resonated with harmonics that shouldn't be possible. How long until the ritual finishes? 2 hours. Maybe less. But Sera, if you break the circle now, the binding will snap back, stronger than before. I'll lose everything and probably die from the magical whiplash. I know. Sera stood, energy crackling around her like a visible aura. Then we hold them off for 2 hours. Whatever it takes. She strode toward the canyon entrance, where the sounds of battle grew louder. The Remnant's defenders, women who'd trained for years in secret, were engaging Kael's vanguard, but they were vastly outnumbered. Sera could see it all somehow, her awareness expanded beyond normal perception. She could feel the earth trembling under thousands of boots, taste the metal of swords on the wind, sense the heat of aggression radiating from the attacking army. And at the center of it all, like a cold void, Prince Kael, advancing toward her with single-minded purpose. Sera reached the canyon entrance just as the first wave of alpha soldiers broke through. She raised her hand, not fully knowing what she was doing, only that she needed to stop them. And the earth responded, erupting in spikes that threw soldiers back, creating a wall between the remnant and the army. But the effort cost her. She collapsed to one knee, blood streaming from her nose. The ritual wasn't complete. She had power but not control. Not yet. And Kael was still coming. She could feel him getting closer, sense his intention like a blade pressed against her consciousness. Just 2 more hours, she whispered, struggling to stand. I just need 2 more hours. But then she felt it. Kael's own power, his alpha dominance sharpened into a weapon, trying to force her submission even from a distance. And she realized the terrible truth. He wasn't just trying to capture her. He was trying to interrupt the ritual, to catch her in this liminal state where she was vulnerable to his consumption ritual. He was going to steal her awakening mid-transformation. No. Chapter 9. Fury unleashed. Sera couldn't hold them anymore. The soldiers poured through the canyon entrance, like a flood, overwhelming the Remnant's defenders. She watched Mira fall, a sword through her shoulder. Watched young Omegas, some barely teenagers, fighting with desperate courage against opponents who'd trained for war since birth. And she made a choice. Thessa, she screamed. Complete the ritual now. It's not ready. You're not ready. Do it. Thessa's face showed anguish, but she obeyed. The chanting intensified, reaching a fever pitch. The pillars exploded with light so bright it turned night to day. And the energy that had been flowing into Sera became a torrent. The pain was indescribable. Sera felt herself being unmade and remade simultaneously, every cell in her body rewritten by elemental forces that had existed before life itself. She screamed, and the scream became thunder. The binding shattered completely. Power flooded through her. Not the careful, controlled awakening they'd planned, but everything at once. 5,000 years of suppressed Omega strength, all the denied potential of 10,000 generations, erupting through a single point of release. Sera rose into the air, lifted by winds that obeyed her will alone. Her eyes blazed white-hot. Her hair floated around her head like she was underwater. And around her, the elements themselves took form. Water surged from the canyon streams, coalescing into a massive serpent that coiled through the air, its scales glittering in the blood moon's light. Earth tore itself free from the ground, forming a golem 30 feet tall, its eyes glowing green. Fire erupted from the ritual circle, taking the shape of a phoenix whose wings spread across the sky. And air itself condensed, solidifying into a dragon that roared with the voice of hurricanes. The alpha soldiers stopped, frozen in terror. They'd come to fight women. Instead, they faced a goddess. "I am the last daughter," Sera's voice boomed, echoing off canyon walls with supernatural resonance. "I am the reckoning you've feared for 5,000 years. I am every Omega you've enslaved, every power you've stolen, every voice you've silenced. And I am done being afraid of you." She raised her hand. The earth golem moved, each footstep causing tremors that threw soldiers off their feet. It reached down and grabbed a siege weapon, crushing it like kindling. Kael's forces tried to regroup. Archers fired volleys of arrows. They turned to ash before reaching Sera, consumed by the fire phoenix's aura. "Cavalry, charge," an alpha commander shouted. The mounted warriors thundered forward, but the water serpent surged to meet them, a wave that crashed over horses and riders alike, not drowning them but tearing away their weapons, their armor, leaving them gasping and defenseless in its wake. "Retreat," soldiers screamed. "It's not human. We can't fight this."
But there was nowhere to retreat to.
The air dragons circled overhead, creating winds so powerful they knocked tents flat and sent supply wagons tumbling. The carefully organized army dissolved into chaos, thousands of soldiers fleeing in every direction. And through it all, Prince Kael advanced. He walked through the destruction with his head high, his alpha dominance radiating like a shield. Lesser soldiers scattered before him, but he didn't even notice them. His eyes were locked on Sera, and in his hand, he held a ceremonial dagger inscribed with ancient symbols. "Impressive display," he called up to her. "But we both know you're losing control. I can see it. The way the elements respond a half-second too slow, the way your manifestations flicker. You weren't ready for the full unbinding, and now the power is consuming you faster than you can process it." Sera knew he was right. Her consciousness felt stretched too thin, trying to be in 4 places at once, controlling forces that wanted to break free and rampage. She could feel herself slipping, her humanity eroding with each passing moment. "It doesn't matter," she said. "I have enough control to destroy you and everything you represent." "Perhaps. But that's not really what you want, is it?" Kael's smile was cruel. "You're not a destroyer, Sera. Even now, even with all this power, you're pulling your strikes. That golem could have crushed 100 soldiers, but you made it target equipment instead. The water serpent disarmed my cavalry, but didn't drown them. You're still too human, too soft. That's why you'll lose." He was right, and the realization horrified her. Even transformed, even wielding godlike power, she couldn't bring herself to kill. The binding had been broken, but the psychological chains remained, conditioning that made her hesitate, that made her care about the lives of people who'd come to enslave her. "You see it now," Kael continued, advancing steadily. The binding wasn't just magic. It was culture, language, every story ever told about what Omegas should be. You can break the ritual, but you can't break a lifetime of being taught that your value lies in nurturing and preserving life, not taking it. "Then I'll break that too," Sera snarled, and the fire phoenix dove toward Kael. But at the last second, she pulled it back. Even now, even facing the architect of her people's suffering, she couldn't do it. Kael laughed. "There it is. The weakness you can't overcome." And that's why he suddenly sprinted forward, faster than should be possible, his dagger raised. "You're mine." He leaped, and somehow, impossibly, his blade found her. The ceremonial dagger plunged into Sera's side, and she felt the inscribed symbols activate, trying to channel her power into him, trying to begin the consumption ritual. Sera screamed. The elemental manifestations wavered, their forms destabilizing. Kael's hand pressed against the wound, and she could feel him trying to drain her awakening, to steal the power she'd sacrificed everything to claim. "Yes," Kael roared. "I can feel it. The power of the first Omegas flowing into me." But then something unexpected happened. The elements rebelled. Earth, water, fire, and air. They weren't Sera's servants. They were her partners, her equals, aspects of herself given form. And they rejected Kael's claim absolutely. The earth golem's fist came down on him like a meteor. Kael flew backward, bones snapping audibly. The water serpent coiled around him, not gently disarming but crushing with the pressure of ocean depths. The fire phoenix's wings wrapped around both of them, burning away his armor, his defenses, everything that made him feel safe. And Sera, despite the agony of the wound, despite the power draining through Kael's ritual, felt something crystallize inside her. The last psychological chain breaking. "You're right," she gasped, pulling the dagger from her side. Blood poured out, but with it came power. Elemental energy that knit her flesh back together even as it destroyed. I was too soft, too conditioned, too afraid to embrace what I'd become. But you just taught me the final lesson, Kael. She rose higher, and now the elements responded with perfect synchronization. No hesitation, no mercy. Sometimes destruction is nurturing. Sometimes burning everything down is the only way new growth can begin. Sometimes being soft means letting evil flourish. Her eyes blazed brighter. You came here to consume me. Instead, you're going to watch everything you built crumble to dust. Wait, Kael's confidence finally cracked. Sera, we can negotiate. I can offer you nothing. You can offer me nothing. Because I don't need your permission, your approval, or your dominance. I never did. None of us did. She turned her attention to his army, what remained of it, scattered and terrified. Go! Her voice boomed across the battlefield. Run back to your kingdom and tell them what you saw here. Tell them the binding is broken. Tell them Omegas remember what we are. And tell them, her smile was terrible, that I'm coming for the throne itself. The soldiers fled. Even the officers, even the loyalists, they all ran. Because they understood that the old world, the comfortable world where alphas ruled unquestioned, had just ended. Only Kael remained, trapped in the water serpent's coils, too proud to beg, too arrogant to admit defeat. Last chance, Sera said, descending to hover before him. Swear to end alpha supremacy. Dismantle the binding rituals. Free every Omega to choose their own path. Give me this, and I'll let you live to see the new world we build. Kael's face contorted with rage and humiliation. Never. I am Alpha. I was born to rule. I won't kneel to an. Then burn, Sera whispered. The fire phoenix's wings closed around him. Prince Kael's screams echoed across the canyon as the flames consumed not just his body but his legacy, his pride, everything he represented. And when the phoenix's wings opened again, only ash remained, scattering on winds that would carry them to every corner of the kingdom, a message written in the death of tyranny. Sera turned toward Valarax's distant capital, where the king still sat on his throne, ignorant of what was coming. One down, she said, and felt her humanity slip another degree. The power was consuming her faster now, the price of the incomplete ritual. She had days at most, but days would be enough. Time to finish what I started. 7 days later, Sera stood in the ruins of the Valarax throne room. The journey from the canyon to the capital had been a blur, a week of destruction and liberation, of breaking binding rituals and toppling monuments to alpha supremacy. Every temple that enforced submission, every law that restricted Omega freedom, every alpha lord who refused to swear change. She'd given them all the same choice, adapt or be removed. Most had adapted. The old king had refused. Now he lay beneath the throne he'd valued more than justice, crushed by the very symbol of his power. Sera felt nothing looking at his corpse. That should have worried her, but worry required emotion, and she had less of that every hour. The Remnant had tried to follow her, but she'd ordered them to stay behind. This final act, the destruction of Valarax's capital, the ending of the Alpha Kingdom, this she had to do alone. Because she could feel herself changing, becoming less Sera and more force of nature with each passing day. Thessa had been right. The power was consuming her. She could still remember who she was, technically. Still knew her name, her history, her purpose. But she experienced it all from a strange distance, like reading a story about someone else. The girl who'd scrubbed temple floors, who'd been afraid of her own dreams, who'd hesitated to hurt even those who wanted to enslave her. That Sera was gone. In her place stood something else. Something that could level cities without remorse, that could end bloodlines without hesitation, that could reshape the political landscape of an entire civilization and feel only satisfaction at necessary work completed. The unbinding had made her powerful, but it had also made her inhuman. Was it worth it? She asked the empty throne room. Her voice echoed off shattered marble. She thought about the week behind her. Across the kingdom, Omegas were awakening, not to the full power she wielded, but to enough. Enough to defend themselves. Enough to demand equality. Enough to reject the binding's psychological conditioning. She'd broken every ritual circle she could find, shattered every artifact that enforced suppression. The binding still existed in older generations. You couldn't undo 5,000 years of genetic manipulation overnight, but the youngest Omegas, those still developing, they were free. They would grow up knowing what they truly were. Was that worth her life? Worth her humanity?
She wanted to say yes.
Wanted to believe the sacrifice meant something. But the truth was, she couldn't feel the satisfaction she'd expected. Couldn't feel much of anything except the constant, growing pressure of power trying to break free of her control. Sera? She turned. Thessa stood at the throne room entrance, looking ancient and exhausted. Behind her, a handful of Remnant elders and several Omegas from the capital, freed now, uncertain but hopeful. You came, Sera said, and was disturbed by how flat her voice sounded. I told you to stay away. We know, but you're one of us. We don't abandon our own. Thessa approached carefully, as if approaching a wild animal. How long do you have?
Hours.
Maybe a day. I can feel it accelerating. The power doesn't want to be contained anymore. It wants to return to its natural state, free, formless, everywhere and nowhere. Then come with us. Let us help you through the transition. You don't have to face the end alone. Yes, I do. Sera looked at her hands, watching energy crackle between her fingers. I'm too dangerous now. The elements respond to my emotions, but I barely have emotions anymore. Just impulses. Urges. If I stayed near people, near the Remnant, I might hurt you without meaning to. Without even realizing what I'd done. So, what's your plan? To wander into the wilderness and let the power consume you. Something like that. Sera moved to where a hole in the wall showed the city beyond. A city that would rebuild. That would become something new. But first, I have work to finish. There are still binding rituals active in the older temples, still artifacts of suppression hidden in noble houses. I'm going to destroy them all. Every last trace of what was done to us. And then I'll go somewhere empty. Somewhere far from anyone I could hurt. And I'll let go. She turned back to Thessa. Tell them I did this willingly. Tell them it wasn't tragedy, but triumph. Tell them, her voice finally cracked, showing a flash of the girl she'd been. Tell them Sera died free. Thessa's eyes glistened with tears. I'll tell them. But Sera, before you go, there's something you should know. The awakening you triggered, the binding you broke, it's spreading faster than we thought. Omegas across the entire continent are feeling it. Some are awakening to small gifts, others to larger ones. What you did here, it's not just changing Valorax. It's changing the world. Sera absorbed this. She'd hoped for freedom for her people. She hadn't expected revolution. Good, she said finally. Maybe they'll build something better than what came before. Maybe they'll remember that power doesn't have to mean dominance, that strength and compassion can coexist. Maybe. She stopped, feeling the power surge again, demanding release. You need to leave.
Now.
Thessa nodded, but paused at the threshold. For what it's worth, you were the bravest person I've ever known. Not because you weren't afraid, but because you were terrified and did it anyway. Then she was gone, and Sera was alone with her power and her fading humanity. She spent the next day traveling the kingdom, using the last of her control to methodically destroy every binding artifact she could sense. By evening, she could barely remember why it mattered. By midnight, she couldn't remember her own face. But she could still remember her promise to Sea
To free their people, whatever the cost.
As dawn broke on her 9th day since the unbinding, Sera returned to where it had all started, the temple with a hidden chamber, the place where she'd first touched the glowing symbols and awakened to what she could become. The temple was abandoned now, the priests fled or dead. Sera descended into the chamber, where Sea had shown her the truth. The symbols still glowed, responding to her presence, but their light was fading. Soon, they wouldn't be needed anymore. Soon, every Omega would carry this knowledge in their bones. Sera sat in the center of the chamber, feeling the power reaching critical mass. There wasn't much time left. Already her thoughts were fragmenting, her sense of self dissolving into elemental awareness. But before she let go completely, she did one final thing. She pushed every remaining fragment of her power into the earth itself, into the water of every river, into the air they all breathed, into the warmth of every fire. She made the gift universal, ensured that no one person would ever again have to make the choice she'd made. Power could be shared, should be shared. That was the lesson the first alphas had refused to learn. As the sun rose fully, Sera felt the last piece of her identity dissolve. Sera the temple servant, Sera the last daughter, Sera the destroyer of kingdoms. All of it faded like morning mist. What remained was pure elemental consciousness, vast and ancient and utterly impersonal. It lasted for perhaps 10 seconds, experiencing reality from infinite perspectives simultaneously. Then, having fulfilled its purpose, having broken the chains and seeded new possibilities, it simply dispersed. The elements returned to their natural state. The chamber symbols went dark. And in the silence that followed, young Omegas from the city arrived, drawn by something they didn't understand, ready to learn the truths that had been hidden from their mothers and grandmothers. They found the chamber empty except for a simple dress and a small crystal that had guided someone through darkness. They found freedom waiting for them. And somewhere, in the wind and the water and the earth and the fire, something that had once been a girl named Sera smiled. "She's gone," one of the young Omegas cried, clutching the dress. "The last daughter is gone." But an elder placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, looking at the symbols on the walls that were beginning to glow again, not with external power, but with the awakening strength in every Omega present.
"No, child.
She's not gone. She's everywhere. In every breath of freedom we take, in every choice we make without asking permission, in every moment we refuse to be less than what we are."
Sera didn't die.
She became the change itself. And that, the elder smiled through tears, that's the most powerful thing anyone can become.
Epilogue.
A generation later, the tale is told in every Omega household, how the last daughter destroyed a kingdom to free a people, how she paid with everything and regretted nothing, how her sacrifice ensured no one would have to make that choice again. The Alpha Kingdoms never recovered their absolute power. Some adapted, becoming true partners with Omegas in societies built on mutual respect. Others fell, replaced by communities that valued all gifts equally. The binding still affects older Omegas, its genetic legacy fading slowly through generations. But the young grow up knowing the truth. They are not weak, not submissive, not less. They are heirs to primal power, children of earth and water and fire and air. And sometimes, when lightning strikes, or earthquakes rumble, or storms rage, or fires burn in patterns too precise to be coincidence, the Omegas smile and whisper, "Sera remembers." Because the greatest truth is this: power given freely multiplies. Power taken by force diminishes. And the girl who died to teach that lesson lives on in every moment her people choose freedom over comfort, courage over safety, truth over convenient lies. The age of alpha supremacy ended in ash and thunder. The age of balance began in the rubble of what came before. And at the center of it all, the memory of a girl who asked herself if freedom was worth the price, and answered with her life that nothing else ever could be. The Yendi to destroy everything, another council member interjected. The texts warn us. The ritual doesn't just free the individual. It channels millennia of suppressed power through one body. Most who attempted it went mad within hours, unable to process the magnitude of what they'd become. They destroyed friend and foe alike before burning out. Sera felt cold despite the chamber's warmth. Is there no other way? None that would matter, Thessa said bluntly. Individual awakenings happen sometimes. Omegas whose bloodlines are strong enough that the binding weakens. They gain small abilities, minor weather sensitivity, enhanced empathy, occasionally the ability to manipulate small amounts of water or fire. But it's nothing compared to the old power. Nothing that could truly challenge alpha supremacy. The unbinding is the only path to complete freedom, another elder said. But it demands everything. Your humanity, your sanity, your life. And even then, there's no guarantee you'll maintain control long enough to accomplish anything meaningful. How long would I have? Days, Thessa said. Maybe a week if you're extraordinarily strong-willed. The power would consume you piece by piece, until there's nothing left but elemental fury in a human shell. Sera looked around the circle of faces, women who'd lived their entire lives free but hidden, always watching for alpha hunters, always one step from discovery. Children growing up, knowing they'd never see the world beyond this canyon. A community built on survival, not thriving. What do you want me to do? That, Thessa said, is not our choice to make. This is your life, Sera. Your sacrifice. We can teach you to control your awakening, to access small amounts of power without the unbinding. You could live here, safe, and in a generation or two, maybe your children's children would carry enough strength to try again.